morning, everybody. Jen and Katie here, coming to you live from Stone Zoo. And today's Zoo to You is brought to you by the U.Fund College Investing Plan and MEFA. And we have some very special guests with us here today. We are in our macaw exhibit at Stone Zoo. So you might have seen these macaws on exhibit in the summertime at Stone Zoo. They do live in the Caribbean coast together, but in the wintertime, when it is a little bit too cold for them to be outside, we have brought them inside to our Windows to the Wild exhibit. So even if you're visiting in the winter, you can still come on by and say hello to our macaws. Now, I know as you've been looking around at them, you might have noticed that we have a couple of different species of macaw in here. So currently, who you're looking at are Rockwell and Cusco. So the macaw on the left-hand side is Rockwell. He's our male, and he is 12 years old, and he is a green-winged macaw. And he gets that name because of that little bit of green that you might be able to see on the side of his wings and along his back. And green-winged macaws, ooh, nice shot, Rockwell, showing us that green. Green-winged macaws are actually the second largest macaw species after the hyacinth macaw. And we also have hyacinth macaws here at Stone Zoo. If you've ever visited the ones in Windows to the Wild that are all blue, that is actually going to be the largest macaw species. So just to the right of Rockwell, we have Cusco. And Cusco is a female. She is 13 years old. And she is a blue and gold macaw. And she gets that name pretty obvious because of that beautiful blue and goldish yellow coloring that she has. On the other side of the exhibit, we have two other macaws. We have Bo and Pepper. And these guys are scarlet macaws. So they do look very similar to Rockwell, our green-winged. The main difference being that they have yellow on their wings instead of that green color. Now, all of these macaw species are found, they're very excited this morning, in the wild, in the North and Central South American range in the rainforest. So they do live in very tropical environments. Trying to give them some peanuts to make them nice and quiet. And as you can probably hear in the background, they are very, very noisy. So macaws do live in pairs with each other, but can also live in groups of up to 30 other macaws. So if you can imagine that screaming sound that you might hear in the background, coming to you with about 30 others at the same time, it's going to be very, very, very loud. And right now I'm giving these guys some peanuts. They really enjoy peanuts and sunflower seeds, and Rockwell there also really likes bananas. In the wild, they would be eating similar food items like nuts and fruits, and actually even some insects. So they don't really do a lot of hunting, but they would eat a few insects, which actually technically makes them omnivores. Now that big beak that you can see is actually strong enough that they could crack a broomstick completely in half with that beak. So they have the ability to crack open some very, very hard nuts, including Brazil nuts in the wild, and are actually excellent seed dispersers for that reason. You don't want any sunflower seeds? Just like, no, thank you. Now, macaws have also been known to gather near areas where there's lots of clay. You'll see them sort of eating and biting at the clay in those areas. And that's because a lot of the nuts that they do eat contain toxins. So they can use that clay to sort of help balance out the acid in their stomachs so that it doesn't make them sick or give them any sort of a belly ache or anything like that. You guys want a peanut?
This kind of speaks to their personalities as well. So some of our zookeepers here at the zoo describe Rockwell and Cusco as birds and Bo and Pepper as people birds. So just like we have people that get along really well with people, Bo and Pepper are really receptive to people, and they'll also sometimes mimic human speech, and they do it in primarily one of our zookeeper, Courtney's voices, because she works with them a lot. So Bo has kind of taken on Courtney's mannerisms. But Rockwell and Cusco are pretty bonded to each other. So they don't really mimic, they don't really find a need to mimic human speech and to be very close to people. So Bo and Pepper are a little bit more outgoing. They're a little bit of our crazy birds. So that's also why I'm using a paper plate to feed them, because like Jen mentioned, they have a really powerful beak. These two are a little unpredictable, so I just feel way more comfortable giving them their food on a paper plate than presenting my very fragile fingers to their very strong macaw beak. These scarlet macaws are the largest by wingspan. So they have a really, really wide wingspan, and they're very good at flying. And they're also one of the more like northern species of macaws. So they're found in parts of southern Mexico, into Central America, and then the northern part of South America. And all of our macaw species in this exhibit, they are considered to be species of least concern, meaning that their populations are not endangered. However, macaws everywhere are facing a lot of threats, primarily due to habitat loss. Just living in tropical rainforests automatically makes them threatened by habitat loss. And another big issue for many species of macaws is wildlife trafficking and the illegal pet trade. So although that they're not endangered, their populations are declining in their natural range due to human involvement. So there are some species and some studies done on populations of scarlet macaws and their nests, and they found that almost every nest in certain areas had signs of human interference, with humans taking chicks out of the nest. So one part of that is the illegal pet trade, and another part of that are resorts and different hotels. There's a large demand for tourism, for tourists to get up close to wildlife. So you might see people with birds walking around if you do travel, when we can start traveling again. And not always, but a vast majority of the time, those birds are taken out of the wild for humans to get photos with. So we always like to encourage everyone to do their research when they are traveling or visiting any places that do house animals, whether it's in the United States or in other countries. Do your research, make sure that this is a reputable facility, an accredited facility, and make sure that those animals are not coming from the wild. Now, a lot of people do have macaws as pets. It's important that if you are looking to get a macaw as a pet, to do your research first to make sure that that is not a wild-caught bird, and to also make sure that you can take care of that animal for their entire life. Macaws can live a really long time in human captivity, with some species living up to 80, maybe even longer. So a lot of times people that have macaws actually have to write them into their wills, so they have someone that can take care of the birds after that human is no longer here. As you'll hear in the background, they are also extremely noisy. They're very, very loud. They're also very messy. And they're extremely intelligent. Macaws are very smart, and they do require lots of enrichment. Without enrichment in their lives, they can become destructive to furniture, themselves, people. So it is very important that if you do have one as a pet, you can take care of them and provide all of those things for them. Here at the zoo, we give our macaws different enrichment items every day. So they will get different puzzle feeders, food presented in different ways, food hidden, things that require them to really think and to also use some of those amazing adaptations that they have. So they might have to tear through things with that really powerful beak or through their feet. They might have to manipulate different things. So they are very, very smart animals. And have we had any questions about the macaws come in?
We have. Tori was wondering if they adapt well to the cold.
That's a good question, Tori. They do not adapt well to the cold. So that's why we don't have them out in our Caribbean Coast exhibit right now, and instead they are in a heated indoor exhibit. So they are tropical birds. They have to be kept at warm temperatures.
And Colin, age 4, wanted to know why their beaks are so sharp.
That's a really good question, and that has to do with what they eat. So in their natural habitat, they're going to be eating lots of nuts and seeds, and those have really, really hard shells on them. So that strong, powerful beak is like a nutcracker. It helps them crack right through the hard shell.
And Ashley was wondering if they're coloring the different colors serve the purpose in the wild.
That's a good question. I don't know about the specific colors, but I do know that although they have really bright coloring on their body, it actually serves as really excellent camouflage in the rainforest. So around here in Massachusetts, you would not think about these bright colors as being able to blend in well. But when you think about all of the bright leaves, flowers, and fruits growing in the rainforest, this coloration actually does help them blend in really well.
And Eva, age 8, asked if any of them are brother and sister, and do they have an impact on each other? How do they interact with each other?
Oh, that's a good question. They are not brother and sister. Bo and Pepper are both males. They are unrelated, and they were recently paired together, so they get along pretty well. They're kind of like roommates that get along really well, but they still like to go off and do their own things. If anything, Pepper is a little bit naughty and he's a little cheeky, and he kind of influences Bo, I think, a little bit. So he's not always the best influence on Bo. However, Bo speaks more than Pepper does. So Pepper has started talking a little bit, and we think that's because of all the time he spends with Bo.
Diana was wondering if they were born at the zoo.
They were not born here at Stone Zoo. They came to Stone Zoo in 2017 or 18.
Yes, yeah.
They were born at another wildlife facility.
It was somewhere down in Florida.
Yes.
I do know that. So all 4 of them came from the same place in Florida. And just like Katie was saying with Bo and Pepper, same thing with Rockwell and Cusco. They're not related in any way. They're a year apart. So when they were born, they just, kind of paired them up, thinking these guys might make a good match for each other. And they've got along ever since, and they've basically lived together just their entire life. So
I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more, and Beth was wondering if they fight for their caretaker's attention.
if they what, sorry?
If they fight for your attention.
Fight for our attention.
I think mostly food. I think they fight for the food we have, and they try to get our attention just by screaming loudly. Like that.
Yeah, perfect example. When you hear that, it's mostly just because they want food, they want peanuts, but these 2 right now are being a little difficult because I'm not quite that tall, so they're screaming at me for peanuts, but I can't reach them.
MP had a question for Julie.
Do macaws eat fish? They do not eat fish. That's a good question, MP. For others listening, that is my dad. So he always, I won't make fun of other people's questions, but I'll make fun of his.
He also asked if they are macaws.
If they are what? No.
All right, I think we're about out of time.
All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We hope you learned more about macaws. Please stop by the Stone Zoo and say hello. They are on exhibit in our Windows to the Wild area. You can go online and reserve tickets today. See you all soon.